Hello, everyone. I am Mark Dykes, your host here at Next Take. And joining me today is Andy with Rivals. We're going to talk all things high school sports. And of course, this time of the year, high school football. Andy, thanks for being here.
Thank you once again for having me, Mark.
Well, it's a fun time of the year. I know that we both have traveled a lot during football season. Now football playoffs are underway, and wanted to start off talking a little bit about some of the playoffs that are going on around the country and some of the more notable playoffs and teams that we've been watching all year. I know there have been a few upsets you see within certain states, maybe at lower classifications, and there's been some upsets at a national level. Teams that we thought may win a state title and could compete for the proverbial mythical national title, if you will, depending on how that's awarded, right? Which is all subjective. But, what are your thoughts so far going into these playoffs? I know in some states they've just started, other states they've been underway for a couple of weeks.
Well, kind of taking a look at what happened last week in the postseason, I think the game that really stood out of them all is Orange Lutheran defeating St. John Bosco in the CIF Southern Section Division One playoffs. I think that was the game that, I mean, there's people saying it's a historic win, not just like a game that was an upset for this year, but like on a, just for historical context, you'd have to go back decades for when a team that had a losing record was able to upend a team like a St. John Bosco, and you have to look at it. This team went 9-0 going into that Halloween game against Mater Dei, and I think everybody, including myself, I mean, I got to look at them at the very beginning of the year when they played Bradenton Manatee down in Florida, and then they were able to just play a half. But for what I saw in that one half, I thought they were a pretty good, ball club when you look at them nationally, just the players that they have and, just explosiveness. Defensively, they fly around to the football. Their secondary does a really good job. But to see that, those last two games, Mater Dei and Orange Lutheran, and you lose back-to-back games, I mean, they were the team, I think, for a while that a lot of people thought could be that, like you mentioned, the mythical national champion. So now I think it's kind of thrown into a loop. I know we've kind of touched on it on the last episode. We kind of talked about some teams, but I think it's as good as a guess as any who that team should be when we're looking at who could be that mythical national champion. I think that in Georgia there was a big upset. I believe Walton upsetting McEachern. I thought that was surprising. I did not see that happening.
Yeah, that was a huge upset. I want to go back to California for a minute because you're right. I don't think anybody saw that coming. But do you think that Orange Lutheran it's on the uptick? Do you think, could there be a new kid in town? Because when you think of high school football in California, you think of Mater Dei and Bosco. Like those names clearly come up. Do you think Orange Lutheran is on the uptick, or is this just a fluke?
I mean, it'd be hard to say it's a fluke just because you beat a team that good. I mean, how could really you look at the record, and I think that's what everybody kind of is staring at, and I feel like we got caught up in that a little too much just because this is the same Orange Lutheran team that on the field they beat Miami Northwestern, which I believe by many experts around the state in Florida, including myself, I would have Miami Northwestern as one of the top 5 teams in the state. So when you're looking at, just what they have done this season and looking at that win against Bosco, I think also a lot of people are taking into account like the weather that night really played this major factor. I mean, Santa Margarita Catholic, they beat they went right by me here. Sierra Canyon, they were undefeated going into the CIF Southern Section Division One quarterfinals, and they were able to hand them their first loss. So, and a lot of people in California were pointing to, poor weather, but it's like the other team had to play in it too. So let's give those teams credit, Orange Lutheran and Santa Margarita Catholic. But also, I mean, I think it speaks to maybe you're looking ahead, like, uh, I was reading an article by one of, our Greg Biggins out in California, and he kind of touched on, you know, the historical context to this game, and he asked some reporters in the California area, like, how far would you have to go back if you're comparing this to another loss like that was as massive? And you have to go back to 1981, 7 years before I was born, when Servite beat Edison 14-7. According to his article, Edison was riding a 33 game winning streak. They were trying for the three-peat in Division One, and ended up, losing to Servite there. So I think Orange Lutheran, you got to believe they're for real. You got to believe they're for real heading into the semifinals here. And I mean, I think over in California, it's as up in the air as ever, because you can't lean on just saying Mater Dei is going to win this thing. Now it's theirs because they got those couple losses this season. To Santa Margarita Catholic and Centennial, which Mater Dei will play Centennial on Friday night. So, I mean, that's the old adage, right? Like, beating it twice.
It's hard to beat a team twice. Do you think? Look, you and I had the opportunity to see Mater Dei together down in Fort Lauderdale. Played St. Thomas Aquinas. Just looked like that game was going to be a blowout the first half, and of course, I don't think, certainly not to my surprise, St. Thomas Aquinas regroups at halftime, comes out, makes a game of it, and actually almost won the game. But I got to tell you, just as far as the eye test goes, Mater Dei's got the athletes. Having been out to Mater Dei, they have great leadership at that school, at not just in the sports, but the administration. I mean, they do a great job there. To me, I think Mater Dei will be hard to beat. I think they're going to win another state championship out there. It's my opinion. They have been beat by Centennial, but I just don't think you're going to be able to beat them twice. I think it's, I think they kind of went to sleep a little bit against St. Thomas Aquinas and then couldn't wake back up. I think that's what they have to fight, is not getting complacent, because some of their athletes are just incredible. And I want to talk about some of the athletes you and I've seen, but that does kind of throw a wrench in maybe the national implications now. I do think it may be hard. Things will have to line up right for either Mater Dei or St. John Bosco. I mean, they're not going to be recognized as a national champion this year. I can't see that happening. It's going to take some losses somewhere else. And then you mentioned McEachin in Georgia. That was a big shock to everyone, them getting beat. But I got to tell you, if I'm from top to bottom and not being biased, I think Georgia may have very competitive playoffs and may very well have what will be the national champion this year. And I think Grayson, is going to be favored, but I think Buford is right up there too. And I think Grayson and Buford are in everybody's top 5, certainly everybody's top 10. Grayson's number 1 in some polls. If things play out and they meet each other and one of those teams goes undefeated, I think they're going to lay claim to a national championship this year. And, when you think about it, what are the odds of a public high school, getting that recognition? And both Grayson and Buford are public. Now, yes, I get it. They get some transfers. But let's be real. It's not like a Catholic school or a private school or an IMG where, look, they're just getting kids from everywhere, not just in their greater local area, but like all over the country. Is comparing apples and oranges. So I do think you really have to look at what Grayson and Buford are doing as public high schools and tip your hat to them. And look, we all know Buford. Their stadium is incredible. Their facility is incredible. By the way, great people there. They do an outstanding job the way they run that. Then you flip over to Grayson, and look, their facilities are just okay. I mean, their football stadium's nice, but their weight room is nothing. It's basically a shed that's next to the school, um, and really, you know, their winning, it hasn't happened by accident. The athletic director there, Brian DeBerry, and Santavius Bryant, the coach. I mean, it's very intentional what they're doing. They won it last year. If they go back to back and go undefeated this year, I think we're gonna see, or we are seeing, one of the better teams to have really played high school football. I think. Period. Uh, which brings us to, boy, we wish there were a playoff, right? It certainly would be nice.
Yeah, looking at Georgia's GHSA Class 6A bracket, I mean, I'd be I'd be foolish, let's just say that, to not respect kind of the path to prosperity that a Buford or Grayson, because if whoever gets there and if they are in fact the team that wins it all, I mean they will have earned it. Just because you look at this bracket and I mean it's a who's who of Georgia teams. You got you look at Grayson. I mean they're going to face Colquitt County this week. You're going to have to stop Georgia commit Jay Lamar in that offense if you want to advance to the third round, and then on the other side is very likely you're going to face an undefeated Carrollton team in that third round. So if you're Grayson, I mean, hey, you got some work ahead of you. It's not like this clear, easy path. I mean, you're going to run into some resistance along the way, and for Buford, maybe it depends who you are, right? I mean, Douglas County is a team. If they end up facing them in the next round, that's what the predictions are. Douglas County was a team, in the preseason that I think everybody thought, hey, they can go back and they should be able to win a state championship in 6A. So Buford's going to have their hands full stopping Michael Johnson, the Utah commit, and their offense. And then this isn't even mentioning you got Lowndes and Valdosta that they're probably going to reach that Final Four. I can't even imagine if somehow they reseed it and Valdosta and Lowndes played in a semifinal. That would be probably the craziest thing. If I thought the
Yeah,
Bill Classic was something,
yeah,
it'd probably be on a whole nother level.
yeah. Wintersville #2, and yeah, you mentioned both Grayson and Buford. They certainly have had tough schedules. Look, Grayson has played Thompson, Alabama, and another team out of South Carolina. They played some national type teams and talent, and been able to get through it. Been able to make it through losing their five-star quarterback Travis Burgess early in the season, coming back, not missing a beat. I think they'll be tough. I do agree that if you're looking at the bracket from afar, you mentioned Colquitt having to go to Grayson Friday night. People should know of Colquitt's name. I mean, they went back to back in 2014 and 15 and were national champions in some polls. So I think Colquitt should be on people's radar. But look, here's the thing about this: will be a very tough test for Grayson because it's just, to me, it's not your average second round game. Colquitt travels well. They're going to bring a lot of fans with them. As you mentioned, they have a big time running back in Jay Lamar. But the big thing about Colquitt is look, their head football coach, Sean Calhoun. He's a first class guy. He's a great coach. He will have them ready to play. He will have that offense schemed up. And if Grayson, in fact, does dominate that game, I think this will be the toughest game that Grayson has played this year. I really do, just because of the totality of Colquitt and what they bring to the table. In look, I've been to Grayson in the past when Colquitt has traveled there, and there have been more fans from Colquitt than at Grayson. Now, do I think that's going to happen Friday? I don't know. But I do know that Grayson fans will travel, and the coaching staff at Colquitt does a great job. They do have some good athletes. So, again, if I'm curious to see how that game ends up. because I think it could be closer. And then on one hand, if Grayson dominates that game, I just think that the only thing that can stop Grayson would be Grayson. And I agree on the other side. Douglas County is loaded up with athletes. You mentioned it. They were talked about a lot early in the season, then kind of fell off the radar. But Buford is loaded up with athletes. They're hungry. Buford's accustomed to winning state championships. They hadn't won one in a while, and they want to get it done. I do think I think football people around the state would love to see a Buford Grayson final. However, that being said, depending on the way that coin toss flips, watch out. Valdosta is a number one seed. And if Buford had to travel to Valdosta, Valdosta has a very good team. They can run the ball and they're physical. And they got multiple guys that can run it. They're not relying on just one. Their quarterback can throw it around some too. Watch out for Valdosta, and you mentioned Lowndes too. Both could be teams that are flying a little under the radar because everyone talks about Grayson, everyone talks about Buford, and everyone talks about Carrollton. I personally think, and I said it at the beginning of the year, Carrollton losing Juju, people thought, oh, well, they may not be this. Look, I think they're better without him. Look, sometimes you lose a player like that. There was so much media surrounding this guy. And look, I hope the best for Juju. I hope he does well. I actually think Carrollton is just leveled out and is a bigger threat than they were last year. Uh, they will be a hard out. It will not be like it was last year, I believe, where Grayson handled them pretty easy. So I do think it's wide open. Obviously, me being from Georgia and us covering so many Georgia teams, it's nice to see Georgia high school football really, I think, among the best in the nation. And of course, obviously, Texas, you can never overlook Texas. But if you look at the national rankings, especially with Bosco getting beat, man, you got to like where Grayson and Buford are standing.
Yeah, no, you absolutely got to like their position right now with the teams that each of them could end up playing by the whole end of it. You use the word totality. That's kind of what you have to look at with either of their schedules by the end of it is look at the totality of the teams that they have played through this stretch, the path to prosperity to getting to Atlanta and being able to compete for that state title and then go ahead and win it. And whoever you're going to face is going to be a formidable opponent. So, IMG Academy is not going to be able to, boast that as they, kind of miss that opportunity with St. Francis Academy and that game that ended up being canceled. You know, I've heard some murmurs that maybe St. Francis Academy will end up playing one more game, so we'll see. That's something that's just kind of out there, nothing firm at all. But you have to think depending on who St. Francis ends up playing. I mean, is that enough to get the Panthers kind of higher up there when you're talking about on a national high school football level being the number one team? But yeah, I'd say Grayson or Buford if they can, because they've been considered the entire year consistently one of the top 5 teams in the country. So I think the way they're playing right now is deservingly so. And if they get some of these wins along the way, that's just adding to their resume.
Yeah, and it'll be people like yourself and other organizations that'll end up putting some of these rankings out. The various news organizations that look at high school sports, take a deep dive into it. I mean, for us, I don't create our poll. We do a national poll. I believe we have Grayson number one. I would personally put them number one. I have seen Modern Day. I've seen St. Francis. I've seen Grayson. I've seen Buford. I've seen some of the good teams, and I think Grayson deserves to be ranked number one. It's my opinion, and I think Buford deserves to be ranked in the top 5 as well. We'll see how it goes. Hopefully, we'll get a couple of games after the state championships have been crowned. Be nice to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, if it is in fact Grayson and Buford at the end, they're both undefeated and they're ranked inside that top 5. I think for all intents and purposes, Mark, that becomes almost your the new de facto national championship.
Yeah.
Now you have two undefeated teams. They would be 14-0, I believe, once they get to Atlanta. You're undefeated. You're inside the top 5. I mean, it meets almost all the criteria that IMG St. Francis had. You know, they were going to be not undefeated. St. Francis has the one loss at St. John Bosco, but you looked at that game, if they would have ended up playing each other, and everybody was saying this is going to be a potential national championship game, the way they're, you know, a lot of people are going to view it, and it's almost like, but their season ends right then and there after that game. So for the Georgia teams, they get to add to that, you know, argument of being the best team, and I think if they can do, hey, I'm somebody that would, if you see a public school end up number 1, that would be an awesome feat, and it would probably kind of, you know, give a little hope, I think, to other publics, you know, around the country. It might be, and I'm only chuckling a little bit because it's like you don't see that around
You
the country
don't.
at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
it's
I
practice.
don't know there's another state. I mean, Georgia, Texas, you know, maybe Alabama, you know, that maybe could have a public school that could make it happen. But boy, can you imagine if it is in fact Buford and Grayson both coming into a state final, being undefeated, playing for not only a state championship but probably what will be a national championship. I mean, the Mercedes Dome in Atlanta will be rocking if that in fact happens.
I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah,
That's what.
one you'll have to make for sure.
Oh, I'm trying. I already
Yeah.
put my name into the
Yeah.
GHSA. So
Yeah.
if you guys over there at the GHSA are listening, I'm trying to get in. So
Yeah. Well, we're going to be there. It's going to be a great time. And you know, a couple of other teams I did want to mention around. I noticed that Salina in Texas is undefeated. They're 11-0. They're a lower classification in Texas, but their program is a very storied program. It's just an incredible community. I had a chance to visit there. Their head coach, Bill Elliott, is just a first-class guy. Can't say enough good things about him and just the whole community. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they've won more state championships in Texas than any other school by the numbers. And they're poised again. It looks like this year, I think they'll win it again. I don't know that anybody's going to touch them. They're just running through people. I think that's an incredible place. I think, again, when you think of high school football, I highly recommend that be a place you visit sometimes. To, you know, their atmosphere is incredible. Their facilities are incredible. It is, of course, it's Texas high school football, right? Yep. And everybody there eats, lives, and breathes football. The whole town goes literally just about as that school goes. And, you know, they do an outstanding job. And I also want to give a shout out to Massillon. You know, I had a chance. We're doing a documentary about the Massillon Tiger football program and the history that we hope to premiere in March is our tentative deadline. But they're advanced, and they do have a couple of losses this year. They have a hard time getting people to play them in their immediate local area. Nobody will play them, so they bring teams in from other areas. But they have incredible facilities. I can tell you, and I've been to a lot of places, Massillon is a totally unique place when it comes to high school football. I mean, different than any place I've ever been. And it's also where literally pro football was born. That's where it started. The first person to get paid to play football was on a semi-pro team in Massillon. And, you know, it's where Paul Brown coached and put Massillon on the map. Would like to see them to continue to do well. Look, Ohio high school football is very competitive. I have new respect for Ohio and Pennsylvania football. There's so much history there. The Pro Football Hall of Fame being in Canton, which is only like 8 miles from Massillon, and just learning about that history. Highly recommend that you visit there as well. But they're always a team. Once they get in the playoffs, anything can happen. They're you know, they've won tons of state championships, but finally in 2023, they won it in a true playoff format. They won a lot of their champions, prior to that format. And Nate Moore, their head coach, first class guy, does a great job. And again, they're a nationally known team. And then their big rival, McKinley, that's probably the greatest high school football rival in the country. But just wanted to mention those teams. When I think of high school football, to me, those two places, Salina, Massillon, out Valdosta, I mean, that embodies high school football when I think about it. Not to take anything away from the IMGs, these bigger places, even in Grayson, uh, great place, great, but it doesn't have quite the community that you see in some of these places. So, to me, it's always fun to see that and see those teams do well, and the way the communities embrace their teams.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, mentioning those teams, and when you're talking Ohio high school football, I mean, to kind of get a understanding of how much it means to the communities. A game yesterday got moved, a playoff game between Elder and St. Xavier uh, got moved to Paycor Stadium, home of the Cincinnati Bengals, to accommodate the kind of crowd that's expected for this postseason game. They had already sold out their allotment of 6,000 to 7,000 tickets for the game by Monday, and a ESPN personality actually went out and pleaded to the OHSAA and the Cincinnati Bengals, and just to gain support for getting this game moved to a bigger venue, which obviously getting it moved to an NFL venue like Paycor that can seat 60,000 people. They've now added 20,000 tickets to be sold for this game, and there's belief that it could absolutely surpass 15,000 when you're talking about attendance and people hearing those kind of numbers for a high school football game. I will say in Florida, people hearing those kind of numbers, it probably is just unheard of.
Yeah, no, I don't know what it is about Florida. I mean, you would think there's great athletes in Florida and incredible football, especially in South Florida. But the attendance just isn't quite there. Georgia gets those kind of numbers that Ohio gets, and of course, obviously Texas gets huge numbers. But yeah, I have a great deal of respect for Ohio high school football. Again, if again, the Wintersville game, you've been in Wintersville, that's a special game. You know, thousands and thousands of people there. The communities come out. But I got to tell you, the Massillon McKinley game is the number one high school rival. I mean, look, you're talking to somebody from Georgia. I would put it over Wintersville, and I would put Wintersville number two. If you ask my opinion, I don't know if there are other games around the country. I know there are rivals, and I know there are in Texas. But just what I've been able to lay eyes on, Massillon McKinley would be one, and Valdosta Lowndes number two. Just incredible. So as we've talked about a lot of this football, put you on the spot to make a prediction. Who's gonna come out of this thing, and who would you say right now will end up being? Give me your top three right now that we'll see after all the playing is said and done. Give me your prediction, top three teams. If Andy's voting, who's it going to be?
All right, we'll take it for what it's worth from somebody that's able to probably see like half of the teams in person, depending on what set of rankings you're looking at, which most of them I see. I've seen Grayson, I've seen Buford, I've seen IMG Academy, St. Francis, Mater Dei, St. John Bosco. I mean, the list goes on. I've seen a lot of these teams. My prediction, the top three teams, when the dust settles, when the smoke is cleared, when the teams have hoisted their trophies or just their seasons have ended, I think top three teams at the end of it, I'm going to say St. Francis Academy is going to be one of those teams. I'm not going to do these in specific order yet because I just want to see how this all plays out. I believe that Grayson is going to come out of this. I think they're going to win 6A, and I think it's going to be something of an accomplishment for that program. And this is absolutely no disrespect to Deuce Smith. He is a fine junior quarterback. He's done a splendid job. Nearly 2,000 yards passing, well over 20 touchdowns thrown. But I cannot underscore, Travis Burgess and just what kind of player he is. I think it speaks more to how good Burgess is as a player, but then to have Deuce play quarterback, and as for good as he's played, it's like they could be. You have to imagine Grayson could be a little bit better, just a little, a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's a scary thought.
Yeah, exactly. That's why somebody I believe must have been related to Grayson in some way, shape, or form. He kind of thought I was speaking down on Deuce Smith, and I told him it has nothing to do with Deuce. It's speaking to the greatness of Travis Burgess, because I think you have to be somebody that believes Deuce is better than Travis, which I don't know. I don't think that's true. I just think that Travis. I got to see them against Collins Hill, and he had them playing at a level that, Mark, if I took that game and said that's how they're going to look every game, I mean, you would have me saying, yeah, I'm right there with you and a lot of folks in Georgia. I think that Grayson is that team. I'm looking at them in current form with Deuce at quarterback,
Right.
but their defense is so good that I think people have to realize they can shut down a lot of offenses, a lot of opposing offenses on any given Friday night. And they're doing not just enough offensively, but they're doing a lot more than probably people would have ever thought. And I think that third team, I'm going out. This is like going out on a limb. And I know like South Lake, Carroll's probably, I mean, really, they're probably the third team just because I think Riley Dodge and those guys, they're going to go ahead and win it. But I feel like I want to say like Santa Margarita Catholic. Carson Palmer has this team playing unbelievable right now defensively. I mean, the kind of performances they've been able to. I mean, you got to look at modern day holding that offense with the guys they got, Chris Henry Jr. and Mark Bowman. To 6 points and a 7-6 win. I mean, how many times are you going to beat modern day 7-6?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not happening. And then you beat Sierra Canyon, who's undefeated. Forget this old weather talk, all this rain talk. I see, the California folks saying you got to put an asterisk by it. No asterisk. The other team played in it too. It's not like when Santa Margarita got on offense and defense, all of a sudden the weather was clear. I mean, both teams played in the same weather, that's straight up. So they right now, I think Santa Margarita Catholic could make that argument to being a top 3 team. And I know probably the IMG folks are like, what the heck? Where are we at? Well, I think you guys had your shot. You didn't want to have the game, so you're going to drop. And I've already seen that in a lot of rankings. They ended up dropping because they kind of miss on that opportunity. I don't think at the end a lot of people are going to have IMG at number 1. I mean, and those who do, I think you're just ignoring everything else that's going on. Like you're just basically saying this team went 9-0. That's good enough for me. Like they didn't need to play St. Francis. And my kind of like analyzing IMG's schedule, I don't think it was strong enough. I think you needed that game at the end. And my rebuttal to, well, you didn't want to play when we wanted to play or whatever. Make it happen. Make it happen.
You're comparing apples and oranges. I mean, you play 15, 16 games and win them all and play the schedule Grayson's played. I think that's a no-brainer. The other thing that people don't really understand about Grayson is they're a deep team. I mean, I know when I was up there prior to the season starting, they had 200 kids, 9 through 12 on the team. I mean, they're traveling with 170 kids. And listen, the backups, I could take the backups at Grayson and make a very competitive team. And so a lot of people don't realize that, through the course of a game, they're able to play fresh guys. They're able to, if you have unfortunate and have an injury here or there, they're able to overcome that much better than most teams. So I think you're and I in agreement. I think it's Grayson's to lose, but look, it's the old saying, and we saw it in Georgia last week in a lower classification. A team ranked 32nd beats the number 2 ranked team, right? And it's the whole adage, well, if they played 100 times, they're going to beat that team 99. You only got to get that one win. That's why it's critical now for coaches. These are teenagers. They look, many of them now are the higher profile players are, I hate to say looking ahead, but maybe a little bit are, Ben, because their life is about to enter, they're going to college. They're going to have an opportunity to make some money, be able to help their family and have some things they've never had. I think that's a great thing. But being able to manage all that, I think, is going to lead to the team that ends up winning it all. Again, I think Grayson could be that team. I think they're led by a really good young coach, and people respect him. So, the other thing I want to touch on, and we've mentioned some players. Look, to win it all, we can say whatever we want. It's rare, but you do see it. And I think you tend to see it at lower classifications. You'll have a team that can win a state championship and may not have that just big time recruit. They have a lot of really good players that buy into the system. Look, to win it all, to win a national championship, and to have a dynamic team, as the old adage goes, you got to have some Jimmies and Joes. That's just the way it is. And so I think, and I'd start with Grayson when you look at them, Tyler Atkinson, of course, Travis Burgess, they lost. Now, they have other great players on that team that are going to play in college and are going to do well. But that said, Tyler Atkinson from, pound for pound, maybe the best athlete I've personally laid eyes on in person this year. It'll be interesting to see him going up against Jay Lamar, against Cockwood. But I hadn't had a lot of interaction with him. I did interview him after their state championship. He was a very cordial, nice person to me when I've been up there and I've seen them working out. He seems to be a team player and a good leader. And if he is that person, Grayson will be hard to stop. And I think the other kid that I've seen is Chris Henry Jr. at Modern Day. He looks to be a man among boys. I think you can just throw it up to him. He makes a play. He's one of the best receivers I've ever seen at the high school level. I do feel like, and you mentioned, I know Modern Day getting held, I guess, to 6 points. And, it seems like they've been a little up and down in games this year. If they are clicking, I don't think you stop those guys. I just really don't. And I don't have an answer, maybe on a few of the games where they haven't looked as good as they thought in like the second half of the St. Thomas Aquinas game. But you have to give St. Thomas Aquinas, who, by the way, is going for 6 state championships in a row. I want to make sure we get that in.
7.
Or 7. That's right, 7. So, look, what Roger Harriet and Twan have done at St. Thomas Aquinas is nothing short of miraculous. 7 state championships. But I would say those two players to me, Tyler Atkinson, Chris Henry Jr., makers. Who comes to mind, for you?
When it comes to playmakers around the country, I got to see Chris Henry Jr. with you as well down there. Catches he made, and then I got to see it again out in Las Vegas when they played against Bishop Gorman, and he made some incredible catches up on a vertical route, on a 9 route, and then he made one up the middle on a seam for a touchdown. He's somebody that, I don't know, I don't want to throw him into that Jeremiah Smith world because I feel like everybody tries to compare receivers to him, which is, I think, unfair. He's one of one. But I do believe Chris Henry Jr. is, one of the most exciting players when you see him play. Madden Williams out of St. John Bosco, when I got to see him, and then watching highlights of him, he's somebody that's been exciting. I just did and I'm going to do it for as many states as I humanly can. So everybody buckle up. These are candidates for the Gatorade Player of the Year award, and I'm doing kind of my own selections on who I think should be up for these awards, and I also have a little honorable mention list that'll go with them. And I released Florida's today, and I think some guys, that stand out to me immediately. Will Griffin out of Tampa Jesuit, which they played against Valdosta during the season. That's their only loss was to the Wildcats. So, but Will Griffin's thrown 33 touchdowns, only 2 picks. He's completed 67% of his passes. I mean, he's had a terrific season for the Tigers. Another player that comes to mind out of Florida is Xander Edwards from the Bowl School. He's been terrific. He had a game against Baldwin this year where he scored 8 touchdowns, which by the NFHS network was a Florida State record. Now I don't know if he passed Derrick Henry or who he ended up passing, but that was the name that everybody threw around.
Yeah, he did. He did pass Derrick Henry. And Bowles has another kid on their team, Asher, I believe.
Yeah, Guido. Yes.
Yeah. That man, those 2 kids are spectacular.
Yes, Georgia. I think somebody. I don't know. Maybe I'm going out there, but I feel like in watching Valdosta twice, and if I'm looking at Georgia and just like players of the year, I like this Marquise Fennell kid is phenomenal. I mean, not just running the ball, but catching the ball. I mean, he's a all-purpose type guy, and I think I gotta believe. I don't think he's out there as like a name that is being considered, but I think for what Valdosta does offensively, he is such a major piece. Along with Prince Gene and Tyreek Wade. Like I think
Ron Foster, yeah.
Yeah, Fennell's got almost 2,000 all-purpose yards. I just looked today, and he's only he's less than 250 yards short of that. So,
well, trust me, Valdosta. Again, we all think of Grayson and Buford, but if Valdosta cannot make mistakes because they have playmakers, they can run the ball, they're physical. Watch out! Watch out for the semifinal matchup, whoever plays them.
Yeah, and a player that's approaching the all-time when we're talking maybe like a national high school football player of the year candidate. I mean, he comes from a school you probably wouldn't have never heard about unless if he played there. And he plays out of a state that we don't think of football. We think of the hardwood. We think of basketball. But Miles McLaughlin out of Knox Community School, he's approaching Derrick Henry's all-time rushing record. He's only I think one. I mean, this kid's been averaging like over 350 yards a game rushing, and he only needs 365 yards to tie Derrick Henry for the all-time rushing record. And then, obviously 1 yard after that, he'll stand alone and be the record holder. So yeah, he's had an incredible season for them. I mean, he's believe it or not, he's actually listed as their quarterback too, and he scored 71 touchdowns. Mark, 71 touchdowns.
Listen. I get tired when you mention he's averaging 300 yards a game. I get tired thinking about that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know that I'm able to get out there and run 300 with nobody trying to tackle me. Let alone you got people hitting you and trying to get to you. That's insane.
Yeah. So he's got to be somebody, and I know people will probably say, well, what about the competition? And I mean, hey, listen, when you have Derrick Henry posting a video on social media saying, "Go get my record, young man," I mean,
good for him.
You're doing something special. And,
Derrick Henry didn't play at a high classification. I mean, he played at
Yulee. Yep.
Yeah, Yulee. Yeah, it was. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, so I mean, Herschel Walker, another. I mean, clearly played at a lower classification school. I mean, look, you can't go by that all the time. I think a lot of people talk about Arch Manning in that fashion. I'm not as familiar where he played, but supposedly he's at a small private school in New Orleans, and maybe the competition wasn't as good, so he was able just to throw the ball around. Look, I'm a Georgia fan. I'm glad we beat Texas. So, you know, I don't know. I think you do see that sometimes. That's another conversation for another day.
Yeah.
You know, kids that maybe play, you know, and some people are just playing where they live, right? This is where I'm going to play. You know, my family's not that family is just we're going to move me all over the place. And so I think it's all relative. I do think it can make a difference in some cases. Some, some it doesn't.
Yeah, and you know, there's players all over the country that have been putting just tremendous regular seasons combined with postseasons. Another player, you know, thinking of can't forget the Lone Star State. You know, Keyshawn Henderson. He's a Houston commit, and he's just had a spectacular year. Almost 4,000 yards, 45 touchdown passes. He's really put up some massive numbers. You just you start to think you don't want to put together like a huge list when it comes to these guys because there's so many deserving, but you
Sure.
got to be able to kind of separate like, you know, historic accomplishment versus, you know, state records, and then also kind of the talent that these guys are up against. But you know, some of these names that really just jump out at me, I think of like, you know, these guys have had some really strong seasons in their respective states, and
Yeah, and I do. I feel like the position of running back is coming back. You know, I think
for if you're somebody that's putting up the numbers, but you've been facing the competition. And I think that's kind of the arguments that are being had now between, you know, reporters. Like for me, like talking to anybody in Florida or any other state, it's kind of who's going to beat who based on, you know, like the teams they've already faced. And then you think of the players and the competition they've faced. And that's where I kind of sit back and say, you look at a Will Griffin and what he's done. His numbers aren't even what you would categorize as the best in the state of Florida. That would actually probably be with St. Petersburg Catholics Chase Burrow, who's somebody, you know, no one really knows of outside
right.
if you're in the Tampa Bay area. But he has 45 touchdowns, just 2 picks. He's thrown for well over 2,000 yards. But the reason I don't have him kind of higher up is, you know, I don't know if he's faced the kind of competition that Jesuit has faced, and you know, we'll see if St. Pete Catholic ends up winning a state championship, which it would be really tough. I mean, they're in the same class as Chaminade Madonna, which we all know is a. I mean, that's just a powerhouse year in
They're
and year
beatable this year, though. I think.
out. I mean, hey, I try to tell people to be you go back to the Ric Flair to beat the man. You know,
Yeah,
to beat the man, you got to beat the man.
that's
So
right.
if you're gonna you can't talk to me about it till you do it. I
That's
mean,
right.
you wanna try to count those eggs before they hatch, but that's not a way to, you know, go into any football game. You know that you got to line it up, and you got to be able to win the downs, win the plays, and make those plays in order to win. So I think that, yeah, if a team does something that we just didn't see, that all of us that are considered the experts, you know, and they make a run like that, well then yeah, hey, now he's got to be in the conversation because you did something
Well,
that no one thought was going to happen.
and the other thing I was mentioning a minute ago, I feel like the running back position is is coming back. You know,
Yeah,
I think at the pro level, and look, a lot of people look at that kind of, it's where things are going. I think it was devalued for a while. I clearly think it's come back. And look, even when you look at teams that win Super Bowls, yeah, you got a lot of them. They throw it around a lot, but you got to have a running game. Let's face it. And I do feel like at the high school level, I feel like a running game is just critical. I think it means more. I think the high school team that has the better running game, the better offensive line, the more talented running backs, I'm going to favor them over a team maybe that could throw it around more. I also think it's harder, to have that sophisticated passing attack in high school. I just think it's harder to have a line that can give your quarterback, the time to let some routes develop and getting the personnel. And we rarely see these tight ends that can make a difference. I'm a big believer. I love tight ends. And if you have a big talented tight end in high school and can use them, man, that's a tremendous weapon. So I feel like, you were mentioning some of the numbers for these running backs. And again, that's why I'll go back to Valdosta, why they could be a scary team, because they can just line it up and run it at you. And they can come, with multiple different players, and their line is good. But look, I love a running game. I'm old school. If you can run the ball and play defense, then you're going to have an opportunity to win games. I believe that. I believe that's Grayson can run the ball. They're very physical, and they have an incredible defense. They have just been able to shut people down the entire year. So it'll be interesting to see how things turn out. If I get to ask you, as we're getting close to coming to the end of our time today,
Yep.
who's on upset alert? If you had to look at it, I know some states have, are further into the playoffs. Georgia's only in the second round, but if you had to say, is there an upset alert out there?
Well, if you're looking at it on a national end of teams that are going to be playing, I don't know. As we get deeper, there's not as many games that you would kind of look at it as like as a major upset. Everything's probably more on the minor end, but I'd say a team that maybe is obviously you do have to look at the Orange Lutheran just coming off of their massive win over St. John Bosco, and now they're going to play Santa Margarita Catholic, which that is a team I just spoke very highly of, and saying that they could get into that third spot really. But hey, Orange Lutheran is a red hot team, even though with all the the forfeits that they had to have during the season because of the ineligible player. They get into the postseason, and as they say, you just give me a shot. Just give me a shot, get into the dance, and let's see what happens. So they are a team that could absolutely upset Santa Margarita Catholic. You have the Bergen Catholic Don Bosco prep game that's going to take place. That's the NJSIA non-public Division I semifinal. I don't think if Bergen Catholic beats Don Bosco Prep, that's really like an upset. I think we'd have to look at that more as that's a rivalry game between those two schools, and Don Bosco just barely edged them out last time around on I believe it was a rainy night, and they won a defensive battle. So, but I guess if they, Don Bosco in a lot of the rankings is higher than Bergen Catholic, and I think we believe an upset is anytime you beat somebody that folks believe is better than you. So Bergen Catholic absolutely could beat Don Bosco, because that's another. It's like modern day Centennial. You got to beat them twice. Can you beat them twice? That's going to be interesting. There's murmurs down in South Florida, Mark. We're just talking about Chaminade Madonna. We're just talking about the Lions, and you got Miami Edison. You got Miami Edison, led by Luther Campbell. You probably folks know that name because he's a popular, R&B artist, rapper. He leads the Red Raiders, and they got some talent. They got some talent on that team. They got and they got some transfers, from California. That Bishop Montgomery team that had to have their season end because of being hit by a ton of sanctions by the CIF over there. The Raiders, from what I'm hearing down in South Florida, they think they're winning. They believe they're moving on. They're going, this Class 1A state championship. So,
hey, I'm sure when they take the field, they got some good music playing, with Luther leading them, right? Yep. I don't believe anybody will beat them on that. But, yeah, like you say, I think they'll have a good chance. Look, I'll throw this one out. We talked about it earlier. I think on paper, many people don't see it. But, look, I think Colquitt going to Grayson, Grayson can't overlook Colquitt. And I think it'll be a good measuring stick. If they just completely dominate that game, then, again, they can just continue to be as good as advertised. If that game is close, maybe it shows a chink in the armor. They certainly don't want to let Colquitt hang around. I'll put it that way. That's the last thing they want to do, is have a one-score game going into the fourth quarter with Colquitt, because Colquitt does have some playmakers. So, I think, again, Grayson's everybody's top 3 in the country. I don't think they can overlook Cockwood.
No, I think they gotta absolutely be vigilant heading into this game. Obviously, the Packers are gonna head into Grayson and believe, hey, we didn't just get to this second round just to look around and feel good about it. I mean, this is a proud program that has been to the podium. They've hoisted a state championship. So for them, this isn't anywhere near new territory. I mean, they know they have a leader in Coach Calhoun who knows what it takes to get there. So you're taking the experience of this coaching staff plus the talent that Colquitt has against what Grayson has right now, which is one of those top defenses not only in the state of Georgia but in the country. And then you're looking at can they get over this hurdle? Because this is one of many that I believe they're going to end up having to get over on their way to Atlanta. So I definitely think that's when I'll be keeping an eye on a lot of games on Friday night. I'll be at one of my own down here in Florida. One that I would think is kind of a upset alert type game, if you want to label it on a smaller level. It's two teams that are ranked in the top probably like 25, 30 of a lot of the Florida polls. It's West Orange High School out of the Central Florida area, Orlando area. They're going to go down to face Venice. They were a team that was ranked nationally last year, and this year they've lost 3 games, but they've played a really tough schedule, and they're looking a little bit more like last year's group as every week goes by. So this team is kind of getting hot at the right time, and West Orange has a young quarterback in AJ Chung, who's he's somebody I listed as kind of honorable mention for Gatorade Player of the Year for my own selections. Kid's had a great year, thrown for over 2,000 yards, 37 touchdowns versus 2 interceptions. So he's somebody that, he's gone up against good competition in that Orlando area and combined that with the numbers to back it up. So should be a good matchup down in Venice on Friday night.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, this time of year, look, you can throw records out the window. It doesn't matter. I've seen teams win state championship with 5 losses. I've seen it several times. So that's why it's so much fun. High school football to me is, look, I think is more physical than pro football. I really do. They don't, they let them play more so, I think, than at the pro level. I just think football's changing. I think high school football is still a pure, it is more pure than I think at the next levels. I really do. That's just my opinion. So, hey, everybody go out, support your team if they're still in it. Hey, if your team's not still in it, get behind a team that is. Go out, support them. You'll have fun. You'll be able to take your family, not cost you a fortune to do so. So, Andy, I look forward to catching up with you next Wednesday. We'll see how things unfold. I'm sure I may be in touch with you prior to that. But listen, thanks for being here, and look forward to, chopping it up every Wednesday right here with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for having me once again.
All right. Thanks a lot. And I'll see you next Wednesday. And for Next Take, I'm Mark Dykes. That's Andy, and we'll see you next week.